So last time we learned how to translate sentences into an equation, correct? Now we're going to give you actually a word problem, and we're going to look at the word problem and translate those so that we get an equation out of it. But we're not going to just get an equation out of this. We're going to do certain steps, okay? So it's really, if you were to do the whole word problem, it takes 5 steps. It's called 5-step plan. But we're just going to do 3 steps today. Solving and so forth, coming up with an equation. The last 2 parts, you will do this, I think, starting tomorrow. Okay, so for now, we're just going to have you come up with an equation once you're given a word problem. And this is sort of what I expect you to do for your homework tonight. Okay, like I said, you don't have to copy the question for your homeworks, but this one you need to copy because we're doing it in class. So go ahead and copy this question. Here's our first word problem. Remember, I told you this skill is going to carry through the whole year. So please learn how to do this now so that it'll be easy for the rest of the year. So write this down. The area of a rectangle is 102 centimeters squared. The length of the rectangle is 6 centimeters. Find the width of the rectangle. Okay. So I'll wait for you to write it down. Okay. And don't go on, okay? Because I want you to do this in a certain way. Okay. So don't, even though you know how to do this, okay, just wait. We'll do this one together, and then I'll let you go on. Okay. Like I mentioned, I know that some of you know how to do this in your head, but that's not what we're doing. I'm going to show you how to do the simple questions using the steps that you need, so that once we do certain ones where it's a little bit more interesting than these simple ones, okay, so you can follow, right? So we're just going to start with the easy one and so forth. So the first step is, anybody know what the first step is? So what do you do when you're given a word problem? What should you do first? What's the very first thing you do here? How about, Lynette? You write the equation? If you could come up with an equation right away, yeah, that'd be great. But this is sort of a, before you come up with an equation, you sort of have to think about this. How about, Livy, what do you think? Define the variable is correct. Now, how are you going to define the variable is, of course, you have to read the problem, right? So as you read the problem, you're going to, like you said, you're going to, first of all, this is our first step. As you read the problem, you're going to decide what the unknowns are, if there's more than one. And you're going to decide what the facts are. Right? So maybe it was so trivial. Of course, you got to read it first, right? Then you do all declare the variable, and then you come up with an equation. So as you read, of course, you have to. Oh, let me move it up. Sorry. Okay. There you go. So as you read the problem, of course, you're not just reading for fun. Well, you are kind of, but as you read, you're thinking about, okay, what are the unknowns and what are the facts? Okay. So what are by the way, in this problem, how many unknowns are there in this problem? Yes, sir. Just one. And what is that unknown that we're looking for?
Variable.
Right. Okay. So, but what is it going to represent? Eric? I mean, not Eric. Yeah, Eric. Yeah.
The width.
The width of the rectangle is correct. Correct. Now, what about some facts? What sort of facts do they tell you in this problem? Yes, sir.
The length is 6 centimeters.
The length is 6 centimeters. That's nice. What else do they give us? How about Dana? The area of the rectangle. Is that okay? So good. As you read it, these are the kind of things that you should sort of be aware of. So now we're ready for step 2. Okay, step 2. Some of you said it already. You have to declare your variable. Okay. Now, when you declare a variable, you have to use this word, this keyword. Anybody know how you declare a variable using this word keyword here? No. Okay. Some of you said variable. Okay. Let me show you. Let. So. This is what you're going to do. You're going to say, let W be the width of the rectangle, because that's our unknown. Okay? And I sort of explained what we're doing in this here. Step 2, it says, define a variable, and you're just going to define using only one variable. It says, choose a variable and represent the unknown, and if needed, you're going to write an expression for the other unknowns, if needed. Do we need it for this question? Are there any other unknowns? No. We only have one unknown, which is the width of the rectangle. You guys, does that make sense? But for some other problems, you're going to have other unknowns, right? And what is it telling you to do? You can represent the other unknowns using just one variable that you're starting with. Does that make sense? We'll do some examples like that. So this is important. You have to use only one variable. Okay. When we go to second semester, then we're going to use more than one variable. Is that okay? During first semester, we're only going to use how many variable?
One.
One. Thank you. Like, you know, it's kind of easy to remember. First, like semester one, you use one variable. Second, semester two, you use more than one. All right, so this is how you do this. And please remember to use that word let. You're letting the whole world know that as soon as you see this, let W be equal to this. When you see W, from now on, W is going to represent width of a rectangle, not just a letter W, okay? So, what's then our next step? Step 2, we declare variable using that keyword let. Okay, let. You're saying letting other people know that W is this. Okay, what's my next step? Somebody said it already. So after we do this, yeah. Write the equation, exactly right. But to write the equation, turns out you always need this. In order to write equations, some people may not realize this, but you always have to know this. For this one, you need a. Who knows what to write as an equation? Maybe this is easier. Yeah, what do you think? A little bit louder? Good. L times W equals area. You said it. It is, you have to write an equation, you always start with the formula. Right? And do we know a formula? Right now, they don't tell you the formula in this problem. They're assuming that you know, right? Do you all know how to find the area of a rectangle?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she said it is C, length times the width. So when you write an equation, you have to start with the formula, otherwise you can't come up with an equation. Imagine you're doing this problem and you didn't know what the area of the rectangle was. Could you do this problem? No, right? So they're assuming that you know this, okay? So every time they give you these word problems, they're assuming that you know, right, some formula, okay, that you have to know. Now, so whenever you write an equation, you always start with a formula. Then, of course, what are we going to do next? How about Chris? Huh? Solve them? Not yet. We don't know how to solve this yet. Right now, it's just a formula. We have to now turn it into an equation. We haven't done that yet. So what do we do here? I would like to ask Aaron? Yes, you plug in the variables, right? In other words, you're going to use which property? Substitution property, right? Do we know what A is going to be substituted as? What, class? Everybody say it.
102.
102. What about L? 6, because they told us the length. What about W? W, but we declare W as. By the way, why do you think I use W instead of X or something? Claire? Yeah, W goes kind of with width. It's kind of good to, use a letter of, it tells you, just by looking at the letter, oh yeah, that was the width, 'cause if you just do X, how do you know it's width or length? You know what I mean? Okay, so here, of course, when you use substitution property, you're going to use parentheses, right? And then you're going to write it down, what goes in there. As you said, it's 102 equals to 6 times W. By the way, if you can, draw a picture, to help you actually see what it is that you're looking at. It helps you to do that, okay? So I really suggest you to do that if you can. If you have like rectangle, circle, triangle, things like that, draw it, okay? It helps you. And of course, a lot of you know how to solve this too, but on your homework tonight, they're not going to ask you to solve, okay? So you stop right here. We're going to stop at step 3, coming up with the equation. The rest of the steps, we'll be doing this very soon, like tomorrow, okay? So enjoy this day while they don't, ask you to solve. But of course, if you have to solve, divide both sides by 6, you know what the W is, right? But yeah, so right now we're just trying to help you to come up with an equation right now, okay? Because that's the most important thing. Because solving equations are a lot easier, okay? Are we good? So do you see what to do for your homework tonight? So can you just write an equation? No, then you're not gonna get a full credit. I want you to do step 1 you can't really show, right? How do you show reading the problem? So you would do step 2 and 3. Does that make sense? Okay. Any question in terms of how to do the homework? Good.
So when you do step 3?
Yeah, so you'll just go up to step 3. Just come up with an equation. But in order to come up with an equation, you of course have to read the problem, right? Decide what the variables are, unknowns are, and then declare a variable and then. Good. Here's our second second example. There are 22 students in a classroom. There are 12 more girls than boys. Find the number of boys in the classroom. This one's a little bit different than the very first example we did. You'll see why in a minute. So go ahead and write this down. As you write it down, think about what you're unknowns are and your facts are, okay? I'll wait. So, now that you have written this problem and have read it, what are the unknowns? Because that's our step one. Can somebody tell me? By the way, with your fingers, how many unknowns do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this problem. I see a lot of ones. How many unknowns do you see in this one? Some of you had 2. What do you? Okay, one person. Eugene, why do you say 2? There are 2 unknowns there. Yeah, there are 2 unknowns, guys. There isn't just right. What did you guys all say? 1 unknown. Look, we have to know, right? Number of boys and number of girls. Even though at the end it only asks for number of boys. Do you know how many girls there are? No, we don't. You know what I mean? So there are 2 unknowns. So be careful, right? So this one, that's why I said this was one. This is a little bit different than the previous one. There are 2 unknowns in this: number of boys and number of girls. So as I said before, how many variables are we using during first semester? 1. So which one would you like to declare your variable for? Number of boys or number of girls? Number of boys. Why do you say that? Could you have done it with number of girls if you wanted to? Yeah, there are many reasons. Why would you want to do it that way? Libby?
Well, because the girls, there's 12 more of them. And
Right.
I like adding better.
Yeah. Good. I like adding better too. Not only you too. That's me too. I like adding better than subtraction. So yeah, if you let, which letter should we use for number of boys? B. Good. If you let B be the number of boys, okay, then to represent the number of girls, can I use G, letter G? Can I use another variable? No, not during first semester, okay? So we're going to use letter B. It said, if you remember from previous notes, it said represent the other unknown using, right, that variable that we just chose. So could you do that? Is there a way to represent number of girls using that letter B? How about Royce? B plus 12 is correct. So B plus 12 is going to be number of girls. Where do you get B plus 12 from, guys? Oh, let me move it up. Okay, hold on. There you are. So where did Royce get number of girls equal to B plus 12? Chuck?
Since girls, there are 12 more girls than boys.
Exactly. The problem says there are 12 more girls than boys. Remember, we did a bunch of exercises like this where you translate phrases into an expression. So because they told us that there are 12 more girls than boys, of course this B plus 12 is the number of girls. Is that okay? Good. So it happens that there were 2 unknowns, and look, how many variables did we use? 1, which is B. Does that make sense? Don't put G equals number of girls. Okay, we could do it that way, but that's later. Okay. During first semester, we're going to just use 1 variable. Now, let's do then step 3. We're done with declaring the variables, representing all the unknowns. In this case, there were 2 unknowns. Can you have 3 unknowns if you want? If they give you a problem like that? Yeah, you could have 10 unknowns. We're not going to give you one of those, but anyway. Step 3 is coming up with an equation, but in order to come up with an equation, I always told, remember, you always have to have what? We just talked about it. Before it was, yes sir, formula. We have to have a formula. This one, the formula is kind of trivial. You may not even think of this as a formula, but can somebody think of a formula that we have to use to do this problem? It may be so simple, you're like, that's not a formula, that's just common sense. But nevertheless, it is a formula. Anybody recognize the formula that we could use here? What do we need to use? What sort of formula do we need to use here? One person? All right, Eric, what do you think?
22 equals B plus parentheses B plus 12.
That's the equation, you're right, and you got the right equation. Now, how did you get that equation? Because in order to come up with that equation, you had to know some sort of formula, right? Even though it's not given to you in a problem, they're assuming that you know this formula. What is this formula that he just used? This is kind of, you may think, wait a minute, that's, oh, okay, go ahead.
Distributive property.
No, that's, no, that you may, no? Anybody see what sort of formula? What about Samuel?
Maybe like B plus 12 parentheses, and then G equals 22.
Well, we're not using G. You're only using one variable. That's what he said, sort of. Yes, what do you think, sir?
So like students equals boys plus girls.
Exactly. How do you get total number of students, guys?
Boys plus girls.
You add the number of boys plus number of girls. Isn't that how you get? So nevertheless, that's a formula. Okay. They're assuming that you know this. right? How many people knew this already? Raise your hand. Right, it was sort of obvious, wasn't it? Okay, so of course you have to use this formula. That's how Eric was able to come up with an equation. If you didn't know, okay, that the total number of students was to add number of boys plus number of girls, could you do this problem? No, they're assuming that you know this. You know what I mean? So every time you come up with an equation, you are using some sort of formula. You know, however simple it may be. Okay. So now, can you come up with an equation? So let's use substitution property. Who knows what to plug in for total number of students there? Again, I want you to use parentheses, right, when you plug in. Okay, what do we plug in there? How about who haven't I called? Patty?
22.
22. And what about number of boys? What do we plug in there? How about I haven't called Carolyn? What do you think? No, we don't have Carolyn. Brianna, what do you think? What do we plug in for number of boys? So look at how are we expressing number of boys as B. So guess what we're going to plug in for number of boys? B. Good. And what about number of girls? What are you going to plug in there? Say it again. 12. So there are 12 girls in this problem. Look at what we declare. When we declare our variable, look, it says right up here, number of boys is B, right? What about number of girls? How are we expressing number of girls as an expression? They told us how many girls were there. So wouldn't it be? Okay, I want you to discuss with your group. Go ahead. I'll give you time. Go ahead. What do we write here? I'll give you time. So Brianna, can you tell me again what we need to plug in here? So for number of students, we plug in what? In the parentheses? Look at your problem. How many total? What is the total number of students? That's one of the fact that we. Good, and then equals to what? Number of boys is. Plus number of girls. You got it. How many people got this? Does this make sense? Now, do you know how to solve it? Yeah, but do you need to do it now? No. Okay. So do you guys see how this is it follows the steps nicely? You declare a variable, okay, and then you write down the formula, and then you plug it in. And of course, when you plug it in, how many people use the parentheses? Okay, good. Please, I saw you didn't use. Some of you didn't use parentheses. Please use parentheses, right? Just plugging it in, and that's how you get it. Okay. Does this make sense? All right. Then let's move on to the next one. By the way, it's okay to rewrite because normally we write the number on the right side. Is it okay if I rewrite it this way? Okay, that's fine. Let's go on to the next one. Here we go. It says a wooden rod 60 inches long is sawed into two pieces. One piece is 4 inches longer than the other. What are the length of the pieces? Okay, this one is sort of similar to the one that we just did, but go ahead and write it down and see if you could declare variables. Okay, and then we'll do the coming up with an equation together in a minute. But go ahead, I'll give you time. As you read the problem, how many unknowns you see? Show me with your fingers. How many unknowns you see? Okay. Okay, this time a lot of you, do you all see 2? How many people are not so sure? Okay, there are 2 unknowns. What are they? Raise your hand, raise your hand. No, don't raise your hand. Let me see. How about Joseph? What are the 2 unknowns that you see here? Right, length of one piece and length of what? That's one of them. Length of the other piece. Right? Do you understand? Because you had a rod, you cut it in half, right? We want to know, right, the length of each pieces. Right? Length of each piece. So is one of them longer than the other, by the way? Yes, it is. How do I know? Yeah. Yeah, because it says one is 4 inches longer than the other. So let's declare a variable. Which one should we declare our variable for? Shorter piece or the longer piece? Shorter piece, because then longer piece you could just add to it, right? I like addition. So I'm going to let, by the way, I drew the picture too. Isn't this nice? I'm going to let x notice I didn't use s because my s looks like 5. You know, s isn't pretty. So I wrote x. Let x to be the smaller piece or shorter piece. And of course, what about then the other piece? Yes, how about one person knows? How do we then declare for the other variable? 2 people, 3, 4? Samira? Yeah, Samira, what do you think? X is the shorter piece. What about the longer piece? X is longer piece? X? Exactly, x plus 4, because they say it's 4 inches longer than the other. So there you go. Okay. Notice what I use here. Let x to be this, and then I say then, right? Then, right? So if you're going to declare, right, if you're going to, not declare, once I declare the variable x, all the other unknowns, as you use the x to represent those other unknowns, I use then. Okay, so you could use let too, but it kind of makes more sense. Okay. All right, are we good? Are these the 2 unknowns that we need, guys? Yes? Now we're ready for an equation, right? So again, in order to come up with an equation, you have to know some sort of formula. Okay? Again, this formula they don't tell you, but they're assuming that you know this. Okay, what sort of formula do you think you need to know? It's sort of obvious. And you may not even think of this as a formula, but it is nevertheless. Paige, what do you think?
Smaller piece plus the larger piece equals 60.
Exactly. Smaller piece plus a larger piece. What do you get? Then you get the total, total piece, the length of the total piece. Right? Now, then of course we're going to substitute it in, right? And who could tell me? So what are we substituting for smaller piece or shorter piece? Dakota? X is correct. Isn't that what we just said? Right? What does shorter piece, how do we represent shorter piece? X. What about the longer piece? How do we represent the longer piece? How about Lilette? Yeah. X plus 4. Ah, okay, x plus 4. And Lynette, what do you think? What about for total? What do we write for total? Oh, I'm sorry. Angel. Angel, what do you think for total? 60, right? Would you not agree? Isn't that how you... Now we're just basically using substitution property, aren't we? In place of shorter piece, we're plugging in x. In place of longer, x plus 4. For total, they told us was 60. Does that make sense? Now, do we know how to solve this? Yeah, but just wait. Okay, we'll do that later. Just enjoy the stay, like I said. Any question? Chris, does that make sense? Yes, Royce, you have a question.
We have to write the formula on the camera.
Yeah, please write the formula. Even though it may be so simple or very trivial, can you please do that? Because then people always have trouble coming up with an equation. Please remember, in order to come up with an equation, you have to have a formula of some sort, okay? Right? However simple it might be. Are we good? Do you see what to do for your homework now?
Yes.
These are the kind of work I want to see. Good.